Now, I don't remember ever wearing a black shirt in church. I just don't. And as I thought this morning, what are you going to wear? Because I'm not as organized as Kathy. And I said, you know what? I know what I'm preaching on. There's going to be demons in the message this morning. And I thought, I don't want to preach about demons. You know, I have this attitude. And I thought, well, you know what? I know what represents that. Darkness. Hence the black shirt. So for those of you who think that I am really celebrating Christmas in my black shirt and black tie, no, I'm not. I promise you I will not be wearing this on Christmas Sunday. Just won't happen. I'm going to introduce a little bit, then I'm going to commit my mouth to the Lord. Last week we covered the supernatural incident on the lake, and it dealt with nature. A hurricane force wind came down and stayed where they were. So much so that these experienced sailors knew, as they said to Jesus, as the word reads in the Greek, is, we are being destroyed. I mean, I rode a roller coaster once and I thought I was being destroyed, but it stayed on. You can imagine they weren't in a roller coaster, they were in their second home, their boat. And they were very familiar with it, and they said, we are being destroyed. And Jesus took care of that. That story begins in verse 22. At the end of verse 22, it says, and they launched out. So from that, we see an intention from up at Capernaum. Oh, by the way, I have a map today. I actually have a map. I was going to be doing this with my hand. I found this cool map. And it's cool because you can actually kind of tell things. Like that's the Sea of Galilee, and that's the Dead Sea, which means that this line is, you're right, the Columbia River. Very good. This is Jerusalem. There's Cana and Nazareth. There's Capernaum where Jesus lived, and of course that's the Mediterranean. So, if Jesus was pushing out from here last week, launching out into the Sea of Galilee, and they were in the sea, and the hurricane force storm came down upon them, and he said, be still, and everything went to what I call just regular glass of milk, a glass of water, just flat. That's where that took place. Well, down here at the bottom is a town called Gadara, or Gadara. And then over here is a area called Gerasa, or Gerasene, Gerasa. So what we have here in the area of my finger, considering how large this area is the area of the Gerasenes, or the area of called Gadarene, or Gadara, which is named after the town of Gadara. So that gives you an idea then of where this is taking place. Okay, I say that in advance because that's coming up. All right, so they launched out. I still haven't prayed, and I'm still talking. They launched out, and then we're going to get, there we go. We're going to get and start in verse 26. So, Father, we're yours. We have ears to hear. Give us the ears to hear and the hearts to understand your word, and allow us to see ourselves in it. Commit our time, my mouth, to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. In verse 26, and they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite of Galilee, So from that map, Galilee was over here, the Sea of Galilee, and then we're over down at the bottom, the southeast. It's interesting that the word itself, they sailed down, it has and I was frustrated with it. It has like three meanings. One is to sail, one is to come to land, and one is kind of not to get out, but it's to get to land so that you've actually landed. And so you have the various readings of they sailed down to, and they sailed, and where's the King James here? King James is right. They arrived. So you have then the picture that from where they launched out last week to go across the lake, they landed where Jesus intended to land. As we all know, God has a plan. So if you arrived at your favorite shopping center, Vons, Walmart, whatever, tongue-in-cheek, I don't know where you guys like to shop. But you get out of your car and you're confronted by, it's hard to describe, viciousness, loudness, corruptness, vileness. You would definitely want to get back in your car and drive away. Well, let's see what happens in verse 27. And when he had come out onto the land, he was met by a certain man from the city who was possessed with demons, and who had not put on any clothing for a long time, and was not living in a house, but in tombs. So what we're going to see, last week they launched out and they went through a supernatural storm, but it was natural. And the disciples were challenged in their faith, where Jesus said, where is your faith? Because I was in the boat. He didn't say that, I said that. But that's the fact. And landing on the opposite shore, we now have a different supernatural confrontation, and it's not a confrontation of nature. It's a very physical, human, social, emotional, spiritual confrontation. It's the whole kit and caboodle. It's the whole basket, the whole ball of wax. This demoniac, and by the way, this is in three accounts: Matthew chapter 8, Mark chapter 5, and here in Luke chapter 8. Matthew tells us there were two. Mark and Luke tells us there are one. There is one. It's not a falseness. There were two, because Matthew tells us there were two. But both Mark and Luke choose to reveal to us what's important in their storytelling. Matthew, by the way, interestingly enough, presenting Jesus as king, gives us the shortest account. And Luke, who is the doctor, gives us the longest account. It's actually a long account. We get a lot of information from Luke. So they land the boat, and Jesus gets out. And so they're like on the shore, and up from them would be a graveyard. It would have been some distance from the town, but it would have been a graveyard, and of course, not the graveyard that you and I think of, but rather into the hillside, and with sepulchres built to place bodies in above the ground. And as time goes on, and graveyards fall into disrepair, some get broken into, and no doors on them, but certainly the caves then, where the dead used to be, would serve as a nice place to hide from the elements. So this man, and we'll call him a demoniac because he was one that was possessed of demons, sees him. And the interesting thing, the natural response to, in my way of thinking anyway, was that if a demon saw Jesus, he would turn the human and run in the opposite direction. I mean, that's my way of thinking. But he didn't. He saw Jesus, and he meets Jesus. I moved Jesus. Jesus is there. He moved to Jesus, We'll get to that in verse 28. But in verse 27, we get the condition of this man. There was, well, we can't even, he is a human, and he is a male human, so he is a man. But honestly, you and I would not recognize him, for the most part, from who we used to know him as in the earlier days. His condition, there was no peace, there was no safety in his life. He had no physical covering. He hadn't worn a robe in a long time, and if he hadn't worn a robe, he certainly wouldn't be wearing any other accoutrements. He did not live among those who loved him, because nobody lives in a graveyard. Well, I mean, this guy did, but nobody else does. So he didn't live among those who loved him. He lived among the dead, and therefore he had no physical covering, he had no social covering, and because he was possessed of demons, he had no spiritual covering. This man, in a sense, was not a zombie in the sense of a television program, but he was a living dead man. It's not like he could, the way I see it, based upon what we're going to see in verses 28 and 29, is that he wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to the store and pick up some fish because I want fish and chips tonight. He wouldn't have been able to make those kind of choices. He was not in possession of himself. Having gone into the land, he was met by this man. And this man, and the word, and I've been intrigued by this since I uncovered it. We consider demon possession, but the word for possessing is having. So it's, and I've said this before the first time we found it in Luke 4, is what do you possess? Oh, I possess some cows and some horses and a tractor and a car. And this guy would say, well, I possess a demon. And it's like, that's not on my list of 3,000 things to get before I die. He possesses a demon. And we think of it in the opposite terms, that demons possess people. But it's people that possess demons. And the having, and I don't want to really spend more time on this than, I probably already have spent more time on it than I should have. But when a person opens himself up to the netherworld, the evil world, the underworld is more than happy to comply. And the awful thing that I have seen, apart from spiritual intervention, that is, heavenly intervention, the door remains open. So this position that this man has, he has demons, he has no natural coverings, he has no natural relationships, he is a living dead man. We get to verse 28. And seeing Jesus, he cried out. Okay, we think of that as, Lord, but I think that this is more like screaming, and I can't do it because then I won't be able to finish my sermon because I won't be able to talk. But he's screaming at Jesus. And I shudder at how he is saying this in my ears. I don't want to hear it. But he screams at Jesus, and he says in this voice that's loud enough, we'll discover, to be heard on the side of the mountain over here by swineherders. They can hear him. And certainly the 12 boys are standing there trying to figure out what they're going to do. I'm pretty sure they don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they've seen demon possession before because they've seen it before, but this is way, the bubble is way, way out there. And he makes this statement, and I've explained this to you before. What do I have to do with you? It's literally what to me and to you. And if you think this is just a demonic term, it's not, because Jesus actually used this phrase. It's an idiom in the Greek, and it's it's in John chapter 2 where Jesus speaks to his mother. She comes and says, "Hey, they don't have any wine," and Jesus looks at her and says, "What to me and to you, woman? I have a plan, and you're trying to move the car this way, and so, Mom, what to me and to you? Okay, you're thwarting my plans." Well, the demons realize that Jesus is going to be thwarting something here, and most likely it deals with them. Right now I should be saying him, but that's going to change as the story unfolds. So what do I have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? See, there's no spiritual blind spot for these demons when it comes to who Jesus is. They know who he is. And to have him around them is a scary for them unnatural thing, if you can believe that. What to me and to you, Jesus, Son of the Most High, Son of the Highest, I beg you, do not torment me. Well, this torment, as we'll see in verse 31, is the end torment. And it's fascinating to me that these guys, or this guy, not the man, but the demon, knows what the end is. And it's like they know what the end is, and there is no redemption for demons. The end is the abyss, which has been created for the devil and his angels. And so they come, and the demons have an agenda. They come to Jesus and they have an agenda. Please go away, in essence, what to me and to you. What are you doing here? We don't want you here. Go away. All of that is in there. And let's see, have I got there yet? Oh, I missed it. Verse 28, seeing Jesus, he cried out and fell before him. Now, why did the demons fall before Jesus, but the Pharisees didn't? Because the demons knew who he was. And honestly, I do not believe they had a choice. I believe they absolutely had to, because who's the superior here? Well, here's the demons, and here's Jesus. They had no choice. I think they absolutely had to. This isn't a picture, as I read it, there's almost the tendency to think of this like Casper the Friendly Ghost. The good demon is here. And so he comes and does obeisance to Jesus, and he says, I beg you, please, don't torment me now, please. Like he's a good guy. I'll guarantee you 100%, this is all evil. It's all darkness. And when they come and bow before Jesus, it isn't because they're good, and it isn't because they want to, it's literally because they have to. He has to. I keep saying they, I'm going to get to they, but I'm still at he. So he bows before Jesus, he says this, he begs him, don't accelerate the program. Don't torment me. Now, we get to verse 29, and for Jesus had been commanding the unclean spirit to come out of the man. And we don't get that because Luke does this. He brings the demoniac up to Jesus, and all this activity takes place. But then Luke gets back to Jesus, and Jesus has been saying, get out of him. Get out of him. Unclean spirit, get out of him. So there's almost like this question that comes up, well, why didn't he? Well, because and I didn't say it on your notes. In fact, I don't like my title, Jesus Confronts the Demoniac, is really not correct. it's the demoniac confronts Jesus, and it's really not even correct. It's the demon confronts Jesus. And that's not even really correct. It's the demons confront Jesus. I mean, it's kind of scratching my head saying, I don't even know what to call this, because in a sense the story unfolds. It's like that, what is that, potatoes au gratin? Yeah. You keep pulling the layers up. It's still potatoes, but anyway. All right, sorry about that, for those of you who are hungry. So they begged in their screaming voice, don't torment us. But Jesus is in charge. And Jesus is demanding that the demon leave. But the demons had an agenda. They had their own agenda. Believe me, the underworld has its agenda. And if you don't know what that is, it's deceiving you in order to destroy you. That's the simple, short program of the underworld, of Satan and his troops. That's what they want. They want to deceive you in order to destroy you. And they have many ways of doing that. And if you don't realize that, just go back last week, listen to the sermon about the storm that came down and was literally attempting to destroy them. So these demons had an agenda. They were looking for a path away from or away from the abyss. They know that's their ultimate destination, but they don't want to go there. They don't want to leave this cushy world. Do you realize the demons would rather be here with us, hassling us, than at home? Because home is a horrible place. So what did this demon do? And then we'll uncover that it's many. For he had been commanding the unclean spirit to come out of him, for it, the demon, had seized him many times. So it took control of him many times. And then Luke tells us that this man had been bound with chains on his arms and shackles on his legs. And he was kept under guard. And this is where my mind bends a little bit, and yet he would break the fetters and the chains, and he would attack people. I can't remember with Luke, you can read for yourself, Mark or Matthew, talk about people that he would attack anybody going by on the road. It's like, we're not going that way. We're not going that way. We're going to go somewhere else, because he would attack. Well, then, see what the demon does. He would remove him from human contact. Under guard, remember, is human contact. We discovered that with Paul. Who did he share Christ with when he couldn't be at the Acropolis? He shared with the Roman soldiers that were guarding him. So what he would do is the demon would drive him into the waste places, the uninhabited areas where there was nobody there. In all of this, the demons are intelligent enough to know how to destroy this guy. So we get to verse 30, and this is where everything then, how do you say, the au gratin, you pull it back, and there's the center of it. And they were entreating Jesus, verse 30. And Jesus asked them, what is your name? And he said, Legion, for many demons had entered him. And what we see here is something so despicably ugly. The demon world was happy to find a human home. And I don't know how it works, but when the door was open, it became a freeway of activity from hell into this man's life. And one after another, the demons came. And a legion is 6,000, but we find that Mark tells us there's about 2,000 swine. That's the end of the story. So not sure whether there was 2,000 demons or there was 6,000, but you get the idea that the man wouldn't say, my name is Trio because there's 3 of us here. Or my name is Duo because there's 2 of us in here. He said Legion because there's many of us in here. And it says entered in. So whatever had this man originally dancing around the black hole of hell at the beginning, it definitely didn't end up well. Because he says, my name is Legion, for many demons had entered him. So the man had only one voice box. So only one voice could be portrayed. And I can't imagine the supernatural struggle inside for each demon wanting to get up there and yell at Jesus and confront Jesus and so on. It was an ugly situation. We get to verse 31, and they were entreating him not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now, we're not going to turn there, but the abyss was the place that was prepared for the devil and his angels. And they were begging not to have to leave this cushy world and go to their ultimate destination. According to Revelation chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, it's called the bottomless pit, and it was opened at the beginning of the fifth trumpet. That was the fifth trumpet. The bottomless pit was opened, and out came nasty things. In Revelation 11, verse 7, the beast is said to have come from the bottomless pit. The same thing in Revelation 17, verse 8. In Revelation 20, verse 3, I thought about reading it, but an angel grabs hold of Satan, casts him into the abyss, and chains it shut for 1,000 years. And that's at the end of the Great Tribulation. So, and then there's more on that later, but not for this. So, they didn't want to be cast into the abyss. That was what they thought Jesus was there to do. Now I'm at a quandary. Number one, because there's the rest of the story probably is, okay, I'm not in the quandary anymore. I'm not going to preach anymore. There's a second half to this story. And you knew that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What, you want me to finish? I can. No, I can.
No, I don't want to speak for everybody.
I'll finish. All right. Okay, Josh talked me into it. Blame him. So there was a herd of swine, and Mark tells us about 2,000 up on the hill. And notice it was swine. Jews were not to be doing that. Swine were dirty. They were not to be doing that. And notice that it's near the graveyard, so no one's going to be bothering them. But here's this herd of swine with swineards there. And they said, can we go into the swine? And in the end of verse 32, Jesus gave them permission. Off they go. And verse 33, and the demons came out from the man and entered the swine. Happy ending, right? And the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were asphyxiated. They drowned. Whoa. And if you want to ask where the demons went from there, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they had to go back home and start all over again with somebody else. Verse 34, don't let it be confusing. When those who tended them saw what had happened, they ran away and reported to the city and out to the country. Why did they report to the city of Gadara and to the country? Well, because swineards would come from the city and from the country. So they went home and spread the news of what had happened. Well, now keep in mind, and we don't have the story here, but the man is free. Okay, we're going to leave him for a moment. Go back to 35. And the people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man whom the demons had gone out of, sitting down at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. Now that had been an impossibility for probably a long period of time. This man was known. He was so known that he was caught from time to time, chained, fettered, and he still escaped and attacked anybody going on the road. Can you imagine now, for the first time in years, and probably his family came as well, And they came and they saw him sitting there, as any of you would be, like this, at the feet of Jesus, listening to what Jesus was telling him. But notice the end of verse 35, and they became frightened. Now, what would you and I do? Hopefully, we would say, whoa, tell us more. Tell us more. I got to know more. I got it. But they became frightened. And in verse 36, and those who had seen it reported to them how the man who was demon-possessed had been made well. Okay, keep in mind, from Mark, we know that there was many boats out there with Jesus. And not just Jesus' boat, but many boats. And so when they landed, there was Jesus and the 12, and then there was the other boats. How many boats? We don't know. How many on each boat? We don't know. But let's say there was at least 100 eyewitnesses. 100 eyewitnesses there on the land, and everybody shows up and they see this guy, and then testimonials all around, not just from Jesus's direct followers, the 12, but from all these other people. That's what you call testimony. Verse 37, and all the people of the country of the Gerasenes, by the way, Gerasenes, I told you, Mark and Luke call it that, and Matthew calls it the Gadarenes. It's just a slight difference in area. And the surrounding district asked him to depart from them, for they were gripped with great fear. Now today's Advent was faith. And we could ask the same thing that Jesus asked the 12 in the boat. Where is your faith? Where is your faith? And here we could say, people, what do you see here? I see a man seated clothed in his right mind. Where was he like yesterday? He was running around, beating me up, killing. Well, I don't know if he killed people. If he had killed people, he'd probably be killed himself. Hard to know. But they told Jesus, please leave. And the word is respectful. It's a request. It's not a demand. Not like, get out of here. It's like, would you please leave? And I suppose if you wanted to give a reason, think about it. If Jesus could do that to that man, what might he see in me that I don't want him to see? Hard to know. Now, this is what I love in this story. Verse 38, but the man from whom the demons had gone out was begging him that he might accompany him. Jesus said no. It's like, wow. If this was the situation, like a camp challenge, and this guy wanted to come and help me, I'd say, yeah, please. I need somebody just like you, because you know, but Jesus said no. But there was a reason. Verse 39, return, this is what Jesus said, return to your house and describe what great things God has done for you. This is one of the few times that we find in the scriptures that when Jesus did something great, he didn't point to the person and say, now don't tell anybody. What does he do? He says, tell everybody. He says, tell everybody. There's a reason for that. Because if I remember right, Jesus is never coming back here again. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's ever coming back here again. In other words, Jesus has more work to do in other places, but he's not coming back here. So he tells this man, and Jesus the man departed, proclaiming throughout the whole city. It says here city, but I believe it's Mark that says in the whole of Decapolis. Sorry, I gotta get my map out. I know it's getting late, but I gotta get my map out and try not to burn it. Here's the Sea of Galilee. There's Gadara. There's Capernaum. This is Decapolis. So the man didn't just declare Jesus here, but he started here and then did that. The man became an apostle. Here's what's fascinating. We don't know his name. But this is the after story. The after story that in the years to come, after Jesus was ascended into heaven, that this area of Decapolis became a foundational seat of sound biblical doctrine. And there was a constant flow of leaders from there to any of the councils in Rome or wherever the councils were held, that men from here would come to defend the scriptures and defend the doctrine of who Jesus was. So this story, and I'm wearing black, which covered a large part of the story, because the whole matter of the demons part of the story was ugly and awful. But the result, the transformation, the change, the light that exuded out of that previous darkness, the man was transformed. And it's absolutely wonderful that he became a faithful follower of Jesus. And what's funny is, we don't even know his name. So, doesn't that encourage you? Nobody's going to know your name 100 years from now, but they'll certainly know the impact of the light from your life into the world. Father, we are so grateful for this story, and thank you that we finished it, because it's a story that needed to be finished. So, thank you for not giving up on us. You have been faithful to us. Lord, may we be faithful to you in the days ahead. For Christ's sake, amen.